Good morning and welcome to this informational webinar. I'm so glad that many of you were able to join us this morning. I am Rebecca Zoll, President and CEO of North County Incorporated, an economic and community development advocacy organization serving the North County area since 1977. I'm very pleased to introduce you to our amazing partners this morning, the University of Missouri St. Louis, MU Extension, Beyond Housing, Missouri Source Link, and the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership, all working together to bring today's presentation for some small businesses directly to you. I also want to send a very warm welcome to the Greater North County Chambers President, Venus Martz, the Northwest Chambers President, Melody Wingington, and Maryland Heights Chambers, Sherry Huibenhoa, who have joined us this morning as well. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to Carl Gunther, Director of Anchor Institution Initiative at the University of Missouri St. Louis. Carl has worked tirelessly this past week to pull together partners and this presentation and will be serving as today's facilitator and will now run us through today's presentation goals. Carl?
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you to everyone who is on the webinar. We recognize COVID-19 presents an immense health and economic challenge. In this daunting time, we hope the information shared today is useful. Our goals for this call are to share concrete information about two federal programs for small businesses, nonprofits, and churches, the Paycheck Protection Program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. It's also to share information on other local business resources you can access and to share who you can reach out to for what resources. At the end, we'll also provide time for questions you have for our presenters. Today, we welcome Rebecca Zoll from North County Inc., Brian Buster from St. John's Bank, Elizabeth Wade from US Bank, Kevin Wilson from the Small Business Development Center, Erica Henderson from the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership, Don Robertson from the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, and Caitlin Jones from Missouri SourceLink. As you think of questions for these economic development professionals, lenders, and technical assistance providers, we ask that you submit those through the question and answer function. We will have time at the end of the presentation to respond. This webinar is being recorded so we can share it with you and others as a resource for local companies looking to learn more about supports during this difficult time. Before jumping into the Paycheck Protection Program, we wanted to mention that the CARES Act created a set of new programs. We are focusing on two of them today in detail. If you are interested in learning more, you can visit the SBA website listed on this slide. I'm now going to turn it over to Rebecca to discuss key information regarding the Paycheck Protection Program.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you very much. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act allocated $350 billion to help small business keep workers employed amid the pandemic and economic downturn. The Paycheck Protection Program is part of the CARES Act and provides 100% federally guaranteed loans to businesses. It is a loan designed to provide direct incentive for small businesses to keep their workers on the payroll. It is forgivable if all employees are kept on the payroll for 8 weeks and the money is used for payroll, rent, mortgage interest, or utilities. You can apply through the SBA, through existing SBA lenders, or through any federally insured depository institution, federally insured credit union, and Farm Credit System institution that is participating. You should definitely consult your local lender as to whether it is participating in the program. Many of the lenders are only working with their current clients on the PPPs. Some lenders began processing loan applications on April 3rd, and the PPP will be available through June 30th, 2020. It's really better to apply sooner than to wait. The following is the general information we are aware of today, but please know that every business is different, so you'll want to check with your lender directly for specifics. Let's talk about who can apply, who's eligible. Businesses that tend to be eligible are a small business with fewer than 5 employees, a small business that otherwise meets the SBA size standard, a 501c3 with fewer than 500 employees, an individual who operates as a sole proprietor, an individual who operates as an independent contractor, an individual who is self-employed who regularly carries on a trade or business, a tribal business concern that meets the SBA size standard, or 501c19 veterans organization that meets the SBA size standard. In addition, some special rules may make you eligible. If you are in the accommodation and food service sector, note that this has to be 500 employee rule is applied on a per physical location basis. Or if you're an operator as a franchisee or receive financial assistance from an approved small business investment company, the normal affiliation rules do not apply. But you should remember that the 500 employee threshold includes all employees, full-time, part-time, and any other status. Let's talk about what you're eligible for. Loans can be up to 2.5 times the borrower's average monthly payroll costs, not to exceed $10 million. Eligible expenses are payroll costs. It is important to note that at least 75% of the forgiven amount must have been used for payroll on this loan. Interest on the mortgage obligation incurred in the ordinary course of business, rent on a leasing agreement, payments on utilities that could be gas, electric, water, transportation, telephone, or internet. For borrowers with tipped employees, additional wages paid to those employees can be included. Let's talk about how much can be forgiven. Borrowers are eligible to have their loans forgiven. Basically, the money used to keep your workers on the payroll for 8 weeks following the loan is what is forgivable. A borrower is eligible for loan forgiveness equal to the amount spent on the following items during the 8-week period, beginning on the date of origination of the loan. So again, those are the costs that we covered earlier. So how could the forgiveness be reduced? This is where you have to be careful because you don't want to get caught by this and not get the loan forgiven. The amount of the loan forgiveness could be reduced if there is a reduction in the number of employees or a reduction of greater than 25% in the wages and salaries paid to employees. So you have to be really careful. Watch your bookkeeping on this. The loan forgiveness cannot exceed the principal. The forgiveness will be reduced if full-time headcount declines or if salaries and wages do decrease. Rehiring does need to be done by June 30th if you're going to do rehiring. Loan payments will also be deferred for 6 months. No collateral or personal guarantees are required. Neither the government nor lenders will charge small businesses any fees. The loan has a maturity of 2 years and an interest rate of 1%. Let's talk about what banks are going to be looking for. In evaluating eligibility, lenders are directed to consider whether the borrower was in operation before February 15th, 2020, and had employees for whom they paid salaries and payroll taxes, or paid independent contractors. Lenders will also be asking you for a good faith certification that the uncertainty of current economic conditions make the loan request necessary to support ongoing operations. The borrower will use the loan proceeds to retain workers and maintain payroll or make mortgage, lease, and utility payments. Borrower does not have an application pending for a loan duplicative of the purpose and amounts applied for here. From February 15th, that's February 15th, 2020 to December 31st, 2020, the borrower has not received a loan duplicative of the purpose and amounts applied for here. Note here that there is an opportunity to fold emergency loans made between January 31st, 2020 and the date of this loan program becomes available into a new loan. If you are an independent contractor, sole proprietor, or self-employed individual, lenders may also ask for certain documents such as payroll tax filings, Form 1099, and income and expenses from sole proprietorships. What the borrower won't be looking for, pardon me, What the borrower won't be looking for is a personal guarantee is not required for this loan. No collateral is required for this loan. And the borrower won't be looking at whether you've been unable to obtain credit somewhere else. Let's talk about how you calculate the average monthly payroll cost. So this would be your average monthly payroll cost at your business or nonprofit. You're going to include for employers the sum of payments of any compensation with respect to employees that is salary, wage, commission, or similar compensation, payment of cash tips or equivalent, payment for vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave, allowance for dismissal or separation, payment required for the provision of group health care benefits, including insurance premiums, payment of any retirement benefits, payment of state or local tax assessed on the compensation of the employee. For sole proprietors, independent contractors, and the self-employed individuals, the sum of payments of any compensation any compensation or income of a sole proprietor or independent contractor that is a wage, commission, income, net earnings from the self-employment, or similar compensation that is in the amount that is not more than $100,000 in 1 year as prorated for the covered period. Now, some things are going to be excluded, and let's take a look at that. So excluded payroll costs are compensation of an individual employee in excess of an annual salary of $100,000 as prorated for the period between February 15th to June 30th, 2020. That's February 15th to June 30, 2020. Payroll taxes, railroad retirement taxes, and income taxes. Any compensation of an employee whose principal place of residence is outside the United States. Qualified sick leave wages for which a credit is allowed under Section 7001 of the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, Public Law 1165127, or qualified family leave wages for which a credit is allowed under Section 7003 of the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. Now we're going to talk about the application. But at this time, I want to go ahead and pass this over to Elizabeth Wade, Assistant Vice President and Business Banking Development Consultant at U.S. Bank, and Brian Buster, Vice President of St. John's Bank, to go through the application process and get a little bit more into details, answer some of your specific questions.
Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Brian with the St. John's Bank. So what we're doing is we're being a community bank. We are using the applications that you can see right here. So I'll go through that real quick. First, in the right-hand corner at the top, you want to see the expiration date is 9/30/2020. That is a new updated version of the application. The SBA is allowing the old version, but it's probably just better if you go ahead and make sure you have the new version before you submit it to your lender. To go through the rest of the application, this is pretty much cut and dry. At the top there, you check what kind of business you are. Your business legal name, address, phone number, email address, your EIN number. It's very important to have that accurate information. See right there under average monthly payroll, that's the important figure we just talked about, to have that amount in there. And just simply take 2.5 times to get your final loan amount. We also want to make sure you put number of employees in there as well. Next part there, the applicant ownership. To put the application in the system, we do need 90% represented there. So as you can see, any owners over 20% need to be there. Make sure all owners are there. Make sure the social security number and the address, the title of the owner is there as well. Next, you'll see following slide, the list of questions 1 through 8 that you will be certifying are true. As we talked about, to qualify for the loan, you're ineligible if you owe any money to the government currently, if you're any delinquent on any SBA loans or anything else. I don't know if we have the next slide. the rest of the application. But you want to go through the 8 questions and make sure they're checked properly, especially on question 5 and 6. There's a different spot for you to make your initials. So you can see on the right there, documents to verify the loan amount. That's what we're using in our bank to make sure you have the right amount in there that we can verify. So you see copies of payroll tax reports filed with the IRS. This includes your 941 and your 940. Make sure to have those for all of 2019 and the first quarter of 2020 if you already have it. Copies of payroll reports for each pay period for the preceding 12 months. We don't need 24 of those if you pay every other week. A summary of the 12 months should be fine. As you see there, you want to include your gross wages, including PTO, vacation and sick time. As Rebecca mentioned, that does get paid in this loan. For number 3, number 4, as you can see for number 3, if your company does pay for health insurance premiums, we want to see proof of that. So go ahead and send that to us as well for 2019, the first part of 2020. Then number 4, documentation of your retirement plan funding if your business does that, because that does count as well for the last 12 months and the first part of this year. And that is pretty much the application. What I'm doing at a community bank like me is we take the application. Right now it's just for customers only. We're hoping to expand that here shortly. We put it into the SBA system, usually within 10 to 15 minutes after we verified your dollar amount. We put it in the SBA system. It gets approved right away, and then we get into our queue to get you ready for closing. So we have started funding loans yesterday, and we hope to keep doing that here today and next week. And Elizabeth, on to you.
Good morning, everyone. So what I'm going to talk about today is the application process from a U.S. bank standpoint. Most banks are going to have a very similar process as to us. The biggest difference will be like Brian's bank at St. John's is currently taking paper applications. We are automating all of our processes. So that's going to be the biggest difference, is whether you'll use that form that Brian just went over. Most of the information is going to be very similar to the form that Brian just went over. We just, again, are automating that process. So we currently have 7 steps that you'll go through with us. We may change some of those steps to make it a shorter process, but currently you're going to fill out the application online and certify that you're eligible for the program. We're going to review your application, and then we're going to have you submit documentation. So some of the documents that Brian was talking about in regards to payroll, that'll be that process for document submission. Next slide, please. Then we're going to review that payroll documentation that you're submitting. Then we're going to submit it to the SBA to get their approval. This is basically checking to make sure that you haven't applied for a loan with both Brian and I, for example. And then we're going to let you e-sign the documents, and then we're going to disperse the funds. If you are a U.S. Bank client, you'll get the funds sent to you ACH the same day. If you're a non-client, it will be the next business day. Next slide, please. And then this is our information. So we are going to answer some questions at the end of this, but if you need specific information, feel free to reach out to Brian and I, and we're happy to answer those questions for you. Now I'm going to turn it over to Kevin to talk about the EIDL loan, the emergency, excuse me, the emergency injury disaster loan.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Wilson. I'm part of the America Small Business Development Centers here in Missouri. And today we're going to talk about SBA's Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program and how to apply. So what is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, or the EIDL? It is an SBA direct loan from the Small Business Administration. The SBA is offering low interest federal disaster loans for small businesses suffering substantial economic injury due to the coronavirus or COVID-19. These SBA economic injury disaster loans offer up to $2 million in assistance And the EIDL loans may be used to pay off fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, and other bills that the business cannot pay due to the disaster's impact. It's important to note that the interest rate is 3 3/4 for small business owners, and then the interest rate for nonprofits is 2 3/4. All of this information, it is important to note also, is that all of this information that is on these slides is directly from the SBA's website. And if you have questions, you can call the Customer Service Center at 1-800-659-2955 or email them at disastercustomerservice@sba.gov. Next slide, please. So here are the steps to complete the application. You would go to the website link that you see at the top of the screen, and this information will be provided later on after this presentation. So COVID-19relief.sba.gov/#. So you'll go through the disclosures, the business information, business owner's information. You will then ask to provide additional information, and then there will be a summary and submit portion of the application. Also, there will be a screen that has all of these disclosures that you should note when you're filling out this application. So the SBA will be collecting information for this loan, and that you'll be verifying that it is you're applying due to the COVID-19 crisis. And you'll go through all of the information and check that you do understand what you're doing. It will typically take an applicant 10 to 2 hours to fill out this application. And later on in this slide, in this presentation, you'll get some more information about what you should be prepared to provide the SBA during the application process and when they call you. Next slide, please. So in the disclosures panel on the application, there'll be, you'll have to choose which eligible entity you are and verify that. So you will have to choose one of these to be able to move forward in the application. So whether you're a small business with more than 500 employees, not more than 500 employees, are you an individual who operates a sole proprietor without employees, or an independent contractor, cooperative with more than 500 employees? Are you part of an ESOP? You'll have to choose whether applicant businesses, including, an agriculture cooperative or aquaculture enterprise, nursery, or competitive producer cooperative. And then you'll just go through some of these other ones. So you will have to choose one of these to forward through the application. Next slide, please. You will also have to choose, you have to review and check all of the following boxes, right? So that you will have reviewed and checked the information, that you're not engaged in any kind of illegal activity, no principal of the applicant with the 50% or greater ownership is more than 60 days delinquent on child support payments or obligations. The applicant is not an agricultural enterprise such as a farm. Applicant does not present live performances of a purient sexual nature. That's basically, a strip club or gentleman's club. Applicant does not derive more than 1/3 of their gross annual revenue from legal gambling activities. The applicant is not a business of lobbying, is not in the business of lobbying. The applicant cannot be a state, local, or municipal government entity. And once again, if you have any questions about this, you can call the SBA or email them. So here is all the information that you will need to apply for the economic injury disaster loan. Everything that has an asterisk next to it is mandatory. So business legal name, trade name, EIN number, or social security number if you're a sole proprietor. Organization type, is the applicant a nonprofit organization? Are you a franchise? You'll also need information on your gross revenues for 12-month period to date of the disaster, January 31st, 2020. cost of goods sold for 12 months prior to the date of disaster. Once again, January 31st, 2020. You'll also have to have the information for the state, zip code, business phone, business email, date the business was established, current ownership, and since the disaster, business activity and detailed business activity and number of employees. Next slide, please. Business owner information. So you'll be required to enter this information into the application. Is your business owned by another business entity? Your first name, last name, mobile phone, title, office, owner percent. So do you own 10 and 20, 100% of your business? Your email address, your social security number, your birth date, place of birth, whether you are a US citizen, residential street address, city, state, and zip. You'll also have the option of adding additional owners if there are other owners in your business, and then you would fill out all of that same information for them. The additional information that will be required, you'll have to answer 3 questions. Provide information for anyone who had assisted you in completing this application, whether that was for free or you paid them. Check the box if you're not considered, if you'd like to be considered for the advance up to $10,000. So be sure if you do want the $10,000, you do have to check that box. Provide bank information to send funds, including bank name, account number, and routing number. And then read the statement and check the box to certify that the information you have provided is true and correct. Then you'll come to the summary page and the submission page. You'll review the information on the summary page to ensure all information, once again, is true and correct. And if you believe that it is, then you believe everything is correct, then you will submit the application. It is important to note, once again, is that all of this information can be found on the SBA's website. If you have any questions or need some assistance with the application, you can reach us at our website, which is MissouriSBDC.org. You can find, that will give you all of the SBDCs throughout the state and whichever one is closest to you. You can also contact us through our main number, which is 314-405-8400. Once again, that's 314-405-8400. Thank you so much, and I will be here to answer any other questions. Thank you.
Next up, we're going to turn to our local business resources, and we're going to have Erica Henderson start us off.
Good morning, everyone. As Carl, which is the Regional Economic Development Agency for both St. Louis City and St. Louis County. We have created a small business resource program and a business resource hotline. Our resource loan fund is for small businesses in both the city and in North St. Louis County and the county in general. These are for businesses who are eligible to apply as for a $5,000 working capital loan. This is a 0% interest loan with payments of $50 for the first 6 months, and then the balance is amortized over the next 18 months at roughly $261 monthly. The criteria is very easy. It is that your business is in good standing with the county and the state. You are current on your 18 taxes, being that the 19 tax deadline has been extended, and that you have at least 1 employee and the business has been incorporated at least 1 year. The working capital is used for whatever your immediate business needs are. We recognize that this $5,000 may not be significant. However, this is deemed as a bridge or a transition loan to help you get to the federal resources that others have presented this morning. It's a really quick 2-page Google form that is on our website, which is stlpartnership.com. And you will find COVID small business resources. You click that and you can apply here. And so we are working quickly to turn those applications around as quickly as possible. Once you submit the application, we ask that you follow up with some additional documentation just to verify the information that is requested. And we are quickly turning those funds around to get you back in business. We also yesterday were able to receive $1 million from the St. Louis County Port Authority that will assist us in targeting businesses in the most distressed communities, being North St. Louis County and South County and Lee. And so it is our hope that we are able to assist businesses that are in neighborhoods, the neighborhood stakeholders that drive neighborhood economies and that are employing local residents. So through this program, we will do additional loans in addition to some technical assistance and some discretionary grants in these targeted areas. The discretionary grants will be geared towards your sole proprietors, those who do not qualify for the traditional loan program. So your hairstylists, your barbers, your massage therapists, tattoo artists, your gig drivers, and others. And so on Monday, we will release the grant application. We are working through the final details and what that criteria will look like to ensure that we are ready to assist these entrepreneurs with $500 grants to assist them. Again, these are the businesses who do not currently qualify for our zero interest loan program. So again, we are working to solidify additional dollars so that we are able to grant funding and to do more loans. If you have business questions, feel free to call into the hotline. The Business Resource Hotline is open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. and on Saturday mornings from 8 to noon. And on this hotline, we're able to assist you with many of the questions that have been raised in the chat, in addition to addressing some of the qualifications for the various loan programs. We are also connecting you to a variety of resources on our website and on the Regional Chambers website. And we also do a promotion of the 24/1 website to ensure that we are connecting you to both business resources and social service resources. So if you have any questions, definitely feel free to reach out to us directly, and that is at stlpartnership.com, or call our resource business hotline at 314-615-1777. Look forward to being of assistance to you. Thank you.
All right, next we have Don Robertson.
Hello, I'm Don Robertson. I'm with the Missouri University Extension Procurement Technical Assistance Center. Your PTech professionals are here and ready to help you identify bid opportunities with government contracts, one-on-one, virtual counseling, and resources to grow your business. We can be contacted at the University of Missouri and just simply put Missouri, University of Missouri Extension PTech. That way you can then locate your local office. We have offices throughout Missouri. In the Kansas City area, St. Louis area, we have 2 offices. We have offices in the North Central, and also in the Southwest. One of the things that you need to know is that we are very much still in operations, and we're ready and eager to get your calls so that we can continue to work with you in helping you to find bid opportunities with the federal government. One of the things that you want to be aware of is that there are a lot of resources out there for people who are still able to provide products and services to the federal government to help us during this crisis. One of the things that you want to do is to make sure that you're listed in SAMS. That's the System of Awards Management. If you're not, then you need to contact your PTech rep and they can help you get registered. But if you're already in SAMS, then you need to make sure that you're listed on the Disaster Recovery Registry. And so there are some things that you could do in that registry by simply pulling that up and then adding various keywords, and it'll pull up all the actual contracts that are available during this time. Another valuable resource is the Army Corps of Engineers. They have specific registries for people who have services and products that they can utilize. And so you want to make sure that you're registered with them. And then another resource is FEMA. FEMA has a separate website that's set up for this particular crisis that's going on. There is a host of resources and tips that you want to utilize during this time. And the PTEC counselors have that information. Also, we've made a copy of that information to call, and he'll tell you more about how to go about getting those resources and those documents. But we are very much still in business and eager to reach out and help any one of our clients and anyone who wants to be clients through this process. And again, we look forward to hearing from you. And my number is listed here. Please feel free to give me a call.
And next we have Caitlin Jones with Missouri SourceLink.
Hi everyone, I'm Caitlin with Missouri SourceLink. Here you can see our main page for our website, www.missourimosourcelink.com. So we are kind of a central point of access to get current updated information and connect you to the right resources at the right time for your business. We also have created a bunch of tools given the coronavirus pandemic, which I'll kind of walk through in the next following slides. So here you can see our coronavirus resource page. This page is updated regularly with different federal, state, and local resources included. We also have our resource navigator, which you can click through on this page and have a bunch of resources listed specifically that are providing services at this time. So it's easier to find those that are specific for the COVID pandemic and how they can help you right now. So you can search by your zip code, what assistance you're looking for, what stage of business, that sort of thing. On the next slide, we have our small business financing during COVID-19. So this is going to provide more information about kind of the resources that we've discussed earlier. So with information about financing, we have videos to walk you through the application process, different worksheets to help you through that, a glossary of terms, kind of just making it a little bit easier for you to go through this process. We are also doing a funding match. So if you click that blue button where it says Help My Business Find Funding, you'll be opened up to our financial survey. And this is going to be our funding match process. So if you include a little bit more information about your business, how many full-time jobs you have, your revenues, that sort of thing, we'll be able to feed through this information and match you to what programs are available and then connect you to the appropriate resource partners in your area. Again, those service providers that can help you fill out the application, provide you with more information, etc. We also have a statewide events calendar. On the next slide, you can see a bunch of different workshops that are offered. And again, this is going to be statewide, but what's kind of nice, I guess, about the pandemic is that everything is virtual right now. So even if you are in St. Louis, you can attend a workshop that's being held in Kansas City, Cape Girardeau, kind of anywhere on the map for Missouri. Again, if you're looking for information, there's a bunch of Q&A sessions about disaster loans. Also a lot of just networking opportunities. People are hosting kind of virtual coffee hours. So if you just want to connect with other entrepreneurs, we have a lot of those listed on there as well. We also support a staffed hotline. So on the next slide, you can see our hotline number, which is 866-870-6500. If you have additional questions or just want to speak to someone on the phone, we'll be able to connect you to those different resources and provide you more information that way as well. We also have access to request what's called a personal action plan. So on the next slide, you can see the link for that, www.mosourcelink.com/myplan. And this is going to, again, provide you with a step-by-step email of resources to connect with. So aside from funding, if you want mentorship or support for marketing or business planning, we can be able to connect you to various resources in your area and across the state. So again, my name is Caitlin Jones, Network Navigator with Missouri SourceLink. Give us a call at 866-870-6500, or you can go on our website to get connected to the various resources. Thank you so much, and I'll be here a little bit for questions as well.
All right, thank you, Caitlin. We are now going to enter into question and answer phase. We have a number of questions that have come through. One big question, or one area of questions that have come up, a lot around sole proprietors and self-employed companies. How do they manage sharing payroll documentation? How does being a sole proprietor, self-employed, or LLC change this process? Maybe Brian, Elizabeth, or Kevin, if you could jump in.
I think it might be important to know which program we're talking about. I mean, maybe we take it from the PPP perspective first, and I think each bank might have some different perspectives on which documentation they need for the PPP.
Brian and Elizabeth, regarding PPP, how do sole proprietors, LLCs, self-employed folks handle that application?
So for example, at US Bank, we're going to have a separate application for any contractors, 1099 employees, or self-employed employees or business owners. So we'll have a separate application process. We are in the process of building that out right now, and it should be available next week.
Yes, to go along with that, the SBA delayed the applications for those until supposedly starting today. It was a week later than everybody else, because just like Elizabeth said, we're waiting on guidance from them on what documentation to require. So that should be coming soon.
And on the economic entry disaster loan, it's fairly the same process for sole proprietors. There's just, instead of putting an EIN number in, they would probably be putting in their social security number. But it is generally a similar process. There's some specific information questions that one of the applicants might have. Feel free to call the SBDC and we'll take care of that.
We have another question about how 501c3 nonprofits should answer the ownership question. Again, on the PPP, Brian and Elizabeth.
From what we've done and the couple we've received, just put a contact person's information down and put 0% ownership, of course. And that's what we've been going with. That's worked so far on the few that we've put in the system. We're
going to be the same.
And on the EIDL loan, there's a box that you'd be checking that you are 501c3, and on the ownership section, well, just like the bank, I would put 0% ownership when it came to the ownership piece.
There's another question about, and with PPP, can people use funds to hire new employees, or do they have to rehire their previous employees?
So that information isn't necessarily given to us as far as the guidelines for that. However, I do believe that you can use it to replace people. So if you had someone leave, for example, but those guidelines are not very specific out there as far as if you have someone that leaves or is fired or anything like that. There's not specific information around that.
We've had a few questions about if 2019 taxes were not filed yet, how that impacts the process for PPP or EIDL.
We're still taking applications if they haven't filed their 2019 tax returns.
Yes, you would just give to the bank your financials for 2019.
And that applies for the economic injury disaster loan also.
One question's been about for landlords as tenants are not paying rent, and if they don't have employees as a landlord, are these resources capable of being used by them?
You cannot use the PPP loan. You can use the EIDL loan. Also, I know at our bank and most banks now, these folks should be able to contact their bank and get some sort of deferment payment relief on that payment side.
And so there were some questions following up from Rebecca's section on for the Paycheck Protection Program, the comments about salary being greater than 100,000. Can you elaborate, or Brian or Elizabeth, can you elaborate a little bit on whether loan proceeds can be used to pay for folks with a salary greater than that, as long as they are not paid over that amount during the 8-week period?
Right. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say, so when it comes to your payroll calculation and figure out a monthly payroll amount, you would need to knock those payroll folks that make over 100,000 down to 100,000. So if they make 120,000, instead of dividing that by 12, you would knock it down to 100,000 and divide that by 12. Because the SBA will not pay more than 100,000.
There's also a question on if people hired mid-year last year, how that affects the way people will look at the average payroll cost per month.
And it's just that, it's an average of the 12 months of last year multiplied by 2.5.
Yeah, with us, we haven't had much guidance. There is guidance that if it is a seasonal company, that you take February through June of last year, but we have not gotten guidance, for certain companies that have had a surgence of business at the end of 19. I know my bank, we have taken an average of 6 months of recent payroll. We've adapted it a little bit, so it'd be a question for your local bank to see if they will allow you to increase it.
And Kevin, can you speak to whether people can apply for both PPP and the economic injury disaster loan?
So yes, you can apply for both. However, it's really important to note that you cannot use both for the same thing. So if you get the economic injury disaster loan and you want to go for the PPP, you cannot use both for payroll, right? But you could use them for different things. And then if you do get, you can use, I believe you can use some of the idle loan to pay back some of the PPP, based on the timing, but you cannot use both for the same thing.
Thank you. We have some folks that are asking whether this webinar will be available after the fact. It is. This is being recorded, and so we will be able to share this back with everyone. And in fact, we hope you share it with others. We hope as many companies in the St. Louis region take advantage of these resources. We have a few questions about what the timeline looks like for disbursement of funds. If Brian and Elizabeth can first address the Paycheck Protection Program, and then Kevin on EIDL.
I know for us, we started dispersing yesterday. It's taken a while for these banks, for all of us to get the process down, especially with new information coming every day from the SBA. I think we pretty much have it down now. We started dispersing yesterday, so.
And that's the same for us. We dispersed some of our first ones yesterday as well. So that would have been a week time frame from when we had the first application entered.
I want to note that SBA does require that within 10 days, once we put it in the system, we have 10 days to disperse it. The SBA does not want us holding on to this. So we are required to do it within 2 weeks.
And for the economic injury disaster loan, after approval, according to regulations, they need to, SBA will be dispersing money within 5 days of approval.
We have a few questions on the Paycheck Protection Program. If you don't use all the funds in the 8 weeks, do you give the remaining back? And if an employee were to quit during that time, what might happen with the funds?
I don't think we received direct SBA guidance on this issue. From what we can determine, if at the end of the 8 weeks, if you have extra money, you can return it to us. There is no prepayment penalty on the loan. And from what we can gather, you would not pay interest as long as you give that back to the bank as soon as that 8-week period is up.
Elizabeth at US Bank.
That's the same guidance that we have so far. There's still a lot of things that are very unclear, but I would agree with what Brian said.
We have a few questions about owing back taxes or owing payroll taxes and whether or not people can still apply.
So I had that question earlier this week. We have not been able to find anything in relation to that. So we've allowed people to apply. Brian, do you know?
We've come up with the same issue, but if you look at the PPP application, it talks about several exclusions, but delinquent taxes is not one of them. And on the actual SBA website, it does not ask us that question when we put these applications in.
And we have another question that is, how are we supposed to track the money we spend to verify that it is used for what the loan requires? This is Paycheck Protection Program first, and then is there information about that for EIDL?
So from the PPP standpoint, we have not gotten guidance on the follow-up as to what documentation will be required to have that piece of the loan forgivable. So we're still waiting. I'm assuming speculation will be that it's going to be something from their payroll, just like it was in the beginning.
Right. And also, since you can pay rent, mortgage, interest, and utilities, just make sure for those bills that you pay, just keep a record of them. And that way, at the end of 8 weeks, you can email it to your bank.
I would echo what both of our lenders have said, keep good records, payroll records, things of that nature. I'm also encouraging many of my clients to deposit the money into a separate account. Don't commingle the money so that you can keep a good record of what you spend and what you spend it on.
We have another question where there's a business, if a business uses independent contractors or employees switched to independent contractor status before this event took place, should those folks apply themselves to these programs, or should the business do so?
If someone's paid as a 1099, they need to apply themselves. They wouldn't apply for the business.
If it happens in the middle of the process, I don't think we've received guidance from the SBA on how to handle that. I don't know if Elizabeth, do you know if it happens?
If it happens in the middle, no, we have not gotten guidance.
Great. And then I know this was briefly mentioned earlier, but just to reiterate, we have a question about what the time frame is for the Paycheck Protection Program loan and paying employees from what starting time to what ending time. Elizabeth?
So we again started taking applications last Friday, and we've already funded, so it's less than a week. However, as we continue to get applications, we've been told 3 weeks, and that has to do with the SBA, like Brian said earlier, getting that funding out. So I would think the max is 3 weeks, but I think it will be less than that.
And some folks are asking about whether they can get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. Yet we will send out both the recording of this and the PowerPoint, as well as a survey and a list of other resources that we have gathered for you. It looks like, Kevin, can you speak to someone was wondering about the economic injury disaster loan. Do they apply through the SBA website or go through a bank?
So the EIDL is directly through the SBA, and you would apply at the SBA's website, which is www.sba.gov. And when the slide deck is emailed to them, you'll also find the link in my section.
And just to reiterate this point, if you're a sole business owner with no employees, can you still qualify for a loan that will be forgiven? Brian?
What was that question again? If you're a business owner with no employees?
Yeah. Can you still apply for a Paycheck Protection Program and receive loan?
Yes, you can. Are they giving themselves payroll, or are they 1099, I guess would be, our sole proprietor? But yeah, either way they can.
Okay. And has anybody been turned down for the Paycheck Protection Program?
For us, no. I've had some people I've had to talk with about changing their dollar amounts on the application, but the application is pretty straightforward. If you answer all the questions correctly, you'll be approved as long as you qualify.
And the only ones that I wouldn't call them turn downs, but we've had to rework a few applications like Brian, from a standpoint of they filled out the application for a one owner business, and we really need them to fill out like for a 1099 contracted employee, those kind of situations.
And we also have a question here about what documents are required to include mortgage payments and utilities for Paycheck Protection Program. Brian?
We have not received specific guidance on that, but I would assume, as Elizabeth probably agrees, common sense would be here. Just your utility bill, your mortgage monthly statement. If you don't have monthly rent statements, which you probably don't, just your 12-month lease, I would think would suffice.
We have a couple questions related to churches. If the compensation package for a pastor typically were to include wages and housing, should just wages be included in the application for the Paycheck Protection Program, I believe? Elizabeth or Brian, do you have?
I don't know specifically on churches. We do have that information. I just don't have it in front of me. That's something that we could probably talk offline to that individual if they wanted to reach out to Brian or myself. Unless, Brian, do you know specifically?
No, I don't know. I do not know the answer to that specific question.
And I also want to make a note that people were great about sending in questions ahead of time through the registration process. And so we also can work to try to document some of the answers to these questions and send that back out when we send the presentation out. But please, as Elizabeth said, make use of the ability to reach out to these folks. Part of today's purpose is to help just connect people with folks that can get you answers. We had a few questions about whether the STL partnership is available in Jefferson County. So Erica, are your programs available in Jefferson County?
This program currently is not available in Jefferson County, but if you reach out to me, I can connect you to what Jefferson County is doing. I did put my email address in the chat.
Okay, we will add Erica's email address to this slide and the information sheets that go out after this webinar. And then we also had some folks ask about whether people have received and have been able to confirm the receipt of the $10,000 advance for the economic injury disaster loan. So Kevin, can you speak to whether people are actually receiving funds at this point?
I don't believe, I think today is when approvals will start, and then I believe Monday will be when money will be starting to disperse on the $10,000.
And then we'll take this as our last question. We have two more questions here. One, folks that are in the childcare business, folks are wondering what's recommended for staff, whether unemployment versus going after a paycheck protection program might be most suitable. I know we can't give individual guidance here on this call, but are there things that businesses might evaluate when making that decision? Brian?
That would be more of a case-by-case basis, depending on how much income they make, which program would be better for them, unemployment, EIDL, or the PPP.
Great.
That'd be more of an offline question.
Offline question. Okay. So again, we're encourage folks to reach out to folks with your individual needs in that manner. And then lastly, question about whether the economic injury disaster loan program can be used for maintenance. Kevin, can you comment on that?
For maintenance. What the SBA is going to assign you a loan specialist, and you can give that, give your information to them once they call you. So you'll notice that on the application, there is no slot to put in how much money you want. The SBA will make a determination if that maintenance cost is eligible or not. But my thought is a portion of it possibly will be able to be put into the loan, but the SBA specialist will make that determination at the end of the day.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for attending this webinar, and I want to thank our presenters. You did a great job, and thank you for all the effort you put in preparing for today. As follow-up for this webinar, we are going to send the recording, survey, and other resources that are available to you. And we hope that this webinar has been useful and that you consider taking advantage of these programs and sharing and spreading the word about these programs. Again, we want to make sure that our local businesses can make it through these difficult times. And then lastly, at the close of this webinar, some of you may see a message from Zoom indicating your event is about to begin. You can disregard this message. We're going to conclude the webinar now. Please stay safe, and thank you all for attending this morning.